Welcome to the Sovereign Computing Show, presented by ATL BitLab. I'm Jordan Bravo, and this is a podcast where we teach you how to take back control of your devices. Sovereign computing means you own your technology, not the other way around.
This episode is sponsored by ATL BitLab. ATL BitLab is Atlanta's Freedom Tech hackerspace. We have co-working desks, conference rooms, event space, maker tools, and tons of coffee. There is a very active community here in the lab. Every Wednesday night is Bitcoin night here in Atlanta. We also have meetups for cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, decentralized identity, product design, and more. We offer day passes and nomad passes for people who need to use the lab only occasionally, as well as memberships for people who plan to use the lab more regularly, such as myself. One of the best things about having a BitLab membership isn't the amenities, it's the people. Surrounding yourself with a community helps you learn faster and helps you build better. Your creativity becomes amplified when you work in this space. That's what I think, at least. If you're interested in becoming a member or supporting the space, please visit us at atlbitlab.com. That's atlbitlab.com. All right, on to our show.
Welcome to the Sovereign Computing Show. I'm Jordan, and I'm here with Steven.
Hey, what's up?
And today we're going to talk about what is sovereign computing and why is it important? Why do we care? So let me pose the question to you first, Steven. What is sovereign computing? What does that mean? And what does it mean to you?
Well, I guess sovereign computing would be like computing that I control, that I personally get to, say what I get to do with it. I think it's a broad topic, but I think that's really the core of it for me, is just that it's kind of like, instead of it being in the cloud, it's something that I directly control. Really, it's the old way of doing it more than anything.
Yeah.
How about you?
For me, it's like you said, it's the old way of doing things. It's the default mode for all of humanity, for all of history, until the more recent era of cloud computing and offloading our computing to other parties. So, for example, if we think pre-computing, just think about any tool. Maybe you have a hammer or a saw or a horse, right? Any tool that humans have used throughout history, we always know that when you're holding a hammer or whatever it might be, there is not some sneaky goings on in that hammer that's secretly working against you and making it harder to hammer, or maybe hammering in a way that's less beneficial for you and more beneficial for the hammer manufacturer, right? And when I say it like that, it sounds kind of ridiculous, but this has become normalized in our modern computing era, because computing devices are so much more complex and complicated than a hammer or simple tools. So there's a lot going on under the hood that's abstracted away from all of us. And those of us who are really geeky and get into the weeds, maybe it's our profession, we know what's going on under the hood. But more and more people are realizing that their devices are not working for them. They're working for some other company, typically. And so for me, it's not about any particular technology. It's about knowing that the stuff that I'm using, that I'm putting my effort into and working on, it's serving me and it's serving the people that I design it to serve. It's not doing anything sneaky or nefarious, and it's not programmed by somebody else to do something that's against my own interests. Now, all of that's pretty vague, but we can get into more specifics, like maybe a phone that is recording all of your data and sending it to some other company that makes money off of it in various ways. Or maybe it's something as simple as it's shipping you an update that you never wanted. And maybe you're working on your computer and it demands that it's time for you to reboot because, damn it, it's update time. And no, I will tell you what to do, computer. That's basically like, if I could put it in sort of like
You're not going to survive the singularity with that kind of attitude.
Right. So it's kind of like, if I could put it into a childish sort of like temper tantrum phrase, it would be like, you don't tell me what to do, computer. I tell you what to do. And when I say computer, of course, I mean any of our computing devices. These could be smartphones, tablets, laptops, desktops, servers. So that to me is kind of the crux of it. It's like, I don't want to ask another company permission to use my own property. And when we have a computing device that's running on a permissioned system, like a third party is controlling it, think about it like, I'll give you a concrete example. If I'm using Gmail on my Google Android phone, every time I'm checking my email, or maybe it's my personal photos and videos of my family, I'm doing a little virtual, I'm raising my hand virtually and I'm saying, Google, please let me access the data that I think is mine, but really it's on your servers. And according to the terms and conditions, you're letting me use it as long as you deem it me worthy. But the moment you decide, no, I'm cut off and I have zero recourse. I have zero legal recourse and I have zero technological recourse. So the reason that I moved away from that is because I like to know that where I place my data, it belongs to me and nobody is going to cut me off from it. So I guess that's scratching the surface of it. And we can go into more detail about how the current cloud computing model is and what a more sovereign computing alternative to that might be. Do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I liked your analogy with the hammer, and the hammer is actually, could be, what if the hammer was constructed in a way that benefits the hammer manufacturer and all that. Let's take that analogy a little bit further. So you say our modern, cloud computing, all of the digital services environments that we use in our life, would that be kind of like analogy for that would be like, I'm living on a farm and in the old days or whatever, and the hammer is designed to benefit the hammer manufacturer, and the pitchfork or whatever I use to bale my hay actually leaks my data to someone in the nearest village. Actually, it doesn't leak it to a person. It leaks it to like the milk jug or something like that, and they're all like all these inanimate objects and farm tools and food containers and what have you are actually chattering and gossiping amongst each other and sharing stories about me, and they're doing it to try and predict what I'm going to do next on my farm and see how they can extract the most value out of me. Is that a pretty good analogy, you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And to kind of maybe torture the metaphor, but it's sort of fun. We could think of also maybe your pitchfork is every time you're shoveling some hay, let's say, it's bleeding off maybe 5 or 10% of that kinetic energy that you're putting into it, and it's charging a battery that later will be used to power the pitchfork manufacturer's factory, right? Now may seem a little ridiculous, but like it's benefiting the pitchfork manufacturer by taking away some of your life force, your life energy, and it's bleeding off in a way that you would never choose to on your own if you had any control over it. And I think it's important to point out that none of this is because of technological limitations. When I say none of this, I mean modern computing, the way it's designed. We could still have all of these nice things, right? We don't have to live in a cave with zero technology. In fact, I'm a very technological person. I do it for a profession, and I love technology. I love the cutting edge stuff. So I want a cloud. I want my data to sync across multiple devices. I want these modern conveniences. But it's a fallacy to think that in order to have these conveniences, we have to give up control of our data and our sovereignty to these companies, because they're not designing it this way because of any sort of technological limitation. They're designing it for business reasons, right? Business that it benefits them, typically with data. So that, I think, is important to point out, because we're not here to poo-poo technology or the use of any of this stuff. We're here to show that there is a better way. There's an alternative. And if for anybody who is interested, we will provide what those are and even step by step of how to go through those.
Well, I think a lot of people would, if you told them, hey, you should be a little more attentive to what's going on your farm. You know that your pitchfork is like actually kind of has a mind of its own and is like siphoning off the kinetic energy when you bale your hay, and like you know that hammer is like sending your data back to the hammer manufacturer, and the horseshoes that you fix to the feet of your horse are actually like intelligent and designed to sort of expire after they've used a certain amount of life. And the person then realizes, you start telling this to somebody, and they realize that their whole farm is just like kind of rigged against them, and they're just going to be like, I give up. I'm actually okay with it. Like, yeah, it kind of sucks that like my whole farm is filled with devices that are kind of working against me, but hey, I give up. Like, there's no way I can fight this. Like, it's already everywhere. Like, every single one of my farm tools is manufactured like this. So, like, there's really no point in trying. I give up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a common sentiment, and I totally get it. If I were to tell you tomorrow you have to completely get rid of everything on your farm and replace it all, that would be an impossible task for most people. It's impossible practically, and it's impossible financially. But what if I said, hey, here's a better hammer that doesn't work against you. Just use this. And it's okay that your pitchfork is nefarious and your wagon wheel is nefarious, but just use this hammer for now. That's fine. And you use the hammer and you get used to it. And then maybe a week later or a month later, you find out that there's a better pitchfork, and you swap it out, and that now your pitchfork's not evil. And you just do this, one thing at a time. And within maybe a year or so, you're like, holy crap, I'm living on a farm that is completely what I expect, and all of these devices are doing what I tell them to do and nothing further. And really, that's the way that I would say everyone can approach their computing lives as well. So most of us are going to be using the default apps out there, which are things like Google and Apple and Microsoft, because that's just what's the most popular and what we all use. But don't try to go completely, quote unquote, off grid or full sovereign computing tomorrow, because it's not possible, and you'll just drive yourself crazy, and you'll get that feeling of being overwhelmed and thinking, you know what? It's not worth it. They already have all my data. I might as well just give up and ignore it. And I would say that the goal is not to completely go off grid and erase every shred of your data out there, because that's not possible, right? Like, we've been leaking our data for so long now, for years. The way I look at it is shrink your digital footprint in the same way you might shrink your carbon footprint if you're into that, or shrink your just any kind of footprint where it's an ongoing thing. And you might say to somebody who is overweight, you could start eating better, you could start exercising, and they say, yeah, but I'm already overweight, I'm already so out of shape. Like what's the point, right? It's sort of the same thing. It's like, well, you don't have to. The goal is not to be perfect tomorrow. The goal is just improvement. Like, go in the right general direction. And you'll find that when you start replacing your pieces of spyware with stuff that is completely under your control, you get a sense of peace. Because when we go through life knowing that all of our devices are spying on us, believe it or not, even if we put it out of our minds, it's there.
Yeah.
It affects us on a subconscious level. It affects how we talk, who we talk to, what opinions we express. That the so-called chilling effect, right, with free speech kind of thing. This seeps into our lives, and I truly believe that it stays with us at a subconscious level. So yeah. I think if we look at it in that perspective, it's worth it, and it's also not so overwhelming, because this isn't something that I should beat myself up for not having completely self-sovereign computing today. It's just, hey, this is an ideal. Let me work towards it over time. There's no rush. And if you're interested, it's completely doable. I think everybody can do it. I've seen the most non-technical people manage to replace a lot of their stuff with more self-sovereign options. And so even grandma, as they say, you can do it.
Wow. Well, if grandma can do it, then I can do it.
Yeah. That's the test.
Yeah. So like, why not, why specifically sovereign computing? You could have done another Bitcoin podcast, could have done a privacy podcast or a Linux podcast. What do you think is what's going to separate this from just a Linux podcast? Because I imagine that there's going to be a ton of overlap, right? Sovereign computing calls to mind setting up home servers and stuff like that for me, and which probably involves some command line work and all that. But what do you foresee this being?
Yeah, great question. And the reason I didn't go with any of those other topics is because I couldn't find something other than sovereign computing that encompasses everything. Another term I've heard is freedom tech, but I think sovereign computing is more appropriate because I didn't want to call it the Linux and Bitcoin and open source and privacy and self-hosting show, right?
All my favorite things show.
Yeah, it doesn't roll off the tongue. But all of those things, those are all implementations, or those are all means to an end. And that end is really sovereign computing. Because Linux, self-hosting, Bitcoin, open source, these all have the property that we're looking for, which is computing that is self-sovereign, that does what I tell it to do and nothing more, that doesn't work against my interests, and is under my control. And so all of those things are encompassed in the words sovereign computing.
Okay, so sovereign computing is like pretty broad. There's a lot that we can cover on this show here. Where do we start? Because we could get into stuff here about, how to set up specific projects on your own, like how to the actual nuts and bolts of setting something up on your own server. And then I imagine there's also, that's probably going to take us into more advanced territory. Then there's also more like simpler things like, hey, you can download this app and, you can replace one app with a slightly more private app. And it's not the ideal scenario, but it, is like kind of like 5% better than where you were before. And I'm sure, of course, there's all kinds of current events and stuff that's going to be happening in, the news relating to data breaches and, cloud privacy issues and what have you. So a lot of different ways to kind of crack the nut of sovereign computing. How were you thinking about proceeding with this show?
So what we can do is we'll go through some of the low-hanging fruit steps that people can take in terms of doing this small amount will get you X% of the way there. Stuff that's not going to be too time-consuming or upsetting to your current workflow. And then we'll go into more of the slightly heavier or time-consuming topics, like maybe self-hosting, and then we're actually going to solicit the audience. Please boost in and let us know which sovereign computing topic you want to hear about next. Maybe it's how to self-host your own file server for your videos and your pictures and other things like that. Maybe it's how to self-host a Bitcoin node. Maybe it's just what is a good email app for my smartphone that is leaking less of my privacy than the default Gmail or something like that. Let us know, boost in, and we will answer those questions in that order.
Boost in, man. This like cool like youngster speech. Boost in.
Yes, we should probably talk about, give a quick background on boosting. So podcasting 2.0 is the concept of sending in sats via Lightning to your podcast that you're listening to. So you can go to fountain.fm and look for the Sovereign Computing Show, and you will be able to boost into any individual episode. You can also stream sats. You can do that with a Podcasting 2.0 app. You can replace your current podcasting app with one of these others. There's Podverse, that's on iOS and Android. There's also Fountain FM, that's on iOS and Android as well. And finally, on iOS, there's Cast-O-Matic. So, but if you want to keep your current app and you don't want to install a new one for podcast listening, just go to fountain.fm, the website, and you can find the Sovereign Computing Show, and you can boost in right there. And that will probably be under the ATL BitLab podcast.
Yep, exactly. Be like one podcast, but a lot of different like shows and topics within that podcast. Yeah. Hey, we're figuring it out as we go along. This is, we're here at ATL BitLab right now. It's a hackerspace. It's an experimental place. We're trying new things here. So I don't know. Maybe by the time you listen to this, something has changed, but hopefully not. We'll see.
Cool.
Yeah.
Maybe we could give a teaser of some of the stuff we'll cover in future episodes. Do you have any sovereign computing experience you'd like to share? Maybe something that you've done that has improved your sovereign computing that you're happy with, or maybe even something that you'd like to do in the future that you haven't gotten around to yet?
Well, there's like, what have I done in the past, and what do I want to do? The funny thing is I'm going to be, I might be like, as I join you on the show, maybe more of the skeptic, right? Like I'll be the one maybe applying some of that skeptic pressure and asking some of those questions because, like we talked before, I'm as a UX guy, that's kind of my background is user experience design, and so like I'm always trying to come up with ways to make things easier, and it's definitely the sovereign computing stuff is hard. It's like kind of an aspirational dream for me, but definitely like for example, when it comes to like private email or something like that, I think for like the majority of people, my goal is more to get them to move from Gmail to Proton Mail rather than to move them to self-hosted mail, because I would rather see a robust ecosystem of end-to-end encrypted mail providers competing against each other for people's business than, like, I feel like that would probably get humanity to a better place quicker, is if there were more private mail providers with reasonable business models that aren't about selling data competing for users' business, as opposed to like, okay, you have to go and like host your own mail server or something like that. Not that I'm not interested in the mail server, and I'm glad that people are working on that kind of stuff, but it's like, so when I think about that, it's like stuff like Proton and Signal and all of that is like the kind of, products and services that I cherish. But I mean, I think one thing that's got me a little kind of freaked out is just how useful AI is. And I think I would definitely love to get into AI self-hosting and how to make that good and reasonable. All the AI services are so useful. And I think I personally witnessed over the past like 2 years just how much more I use AI in my daily workflows. It started with art generation, then on to like kind of conversing and paired programming with GPT, to now like using Cursor almost daily. That's the AI powered code environment. And this stuff isn't going away. I mean, it's just too useful for that. Having said that, it's like the easiest way to interact with AIs these days are going through services like ChatGPT, or using something like Cursor, which might interface with the OpenAI API under the hood, or Midjourney or something like that. The self-hosting on the AI, it has a learning curve, but I just, because I don't see the AI going anywhere like it's not as obvious to me how to make that private. I know with something like Signal and Proton Mail, it's like we can use GPG to encrypt that and protect users' privacy. It's just not as obvious to me how to do that with the AI. I know the Mutiny folks have something out now with the Open Secret, but I haven't really had a chance to read up on it yet. But setting that aside, it's just like the AI just seems like right for self-hosting to me, and I would really love to get into some of that somehow.
Cool. AI is going to be a great topic to go over in a future episode. So those of you in the audience, please boost in and let us know what your questions are on AI, privacy, and self-hosting with AI, and what kind of options are out there. There are some good options, and it's getting better all the time is the good news. So that's a little teaser for next time.
Yeah. So what do you think if, you were to, we're talking about just this is this overwhelming space of possible things you could do to regain control over your computing. And it's just about getting, 1% better all the time. So what would be like the thing, I don't know, you had to just say like the one thing that somebody could do that, like, if you were only going to do one thing on your sovereign computing journey, like what would be the one, whether it's a big step or a small step, like what's like the one step you could take that would just have like the most net positive impact on your life? Which I know is raw, because it's like what kind of impact are we talking about? Are we talking about, does it save you money, or it's the low, it saves you stress, or it's makes it more private, or whatever it is? But like what do you think is like the thing that could just like make the most impact?
If people come to me and say, Jordan, I want to take control of my digital life, what's the first thing I should do? I tell them, use a password manager, hands down. And the reason is because it might not seem like this is a very privacy focused thing, or that this falls under sovereign computing, but it really does. If most of us, we have a zillion passwords, and we have no idea what some of them are, maybe we have to reset them frequently because we forget them. But a password manager is going to get that whole portion of your digital life under control. So I recommend using an open source one such as Bitwarden, but if you are starting to use a different one, go for it. Like, any password manager is better than no password manager. And we all think we're very clever with our little algorithm of how we create different passwords for different websites. But if you know anything about password cracking and entropy, those are not secure. We as humans are not good at creating passwords. So stop trying to do it on your own. Offload that cognitive burden onto a password manager and let the software do it for you. And this is going to be step one. Once you've gotten all of your passwords, and it's more than just passwords, it's also like websites that go along with those passwords, obviously. And then you might have, let's say you have some login information, but you also have some secure note that goes with it. So all of this stuff, you get it into one central digital location, and then you can have more control over all of your logins, right? It's sort of like cleaning up your house before you remodel. You have to sort through everything and figure out where it is. And so that's the first thing I would encourage people to do, and start using a password manager. I promise you it will make your life easier. I've never had somebody come back to me and say, I regret using a password manager. In fact, what everybody says is, I'm really glad I started using it. It's so much easier. I wish I had started sooner. So that's my recommendation. Low-hanging fruit. Start using a password manager, and you'll get started on your journey.
Yeah, that's great, because like I think there is something also too about the act of just like, you open the password manager and you kind of like see all your stuff there, and you can organize your stuff. Like you said, you can put notes on things, and it kind of not forces you, but like it just, when you see it all kind of like laid out in this organized way, it makes you kind of feel a little more like you have kind of control over your access information, your identity, and all that. Like that, I actually wasn't even thinking about it from that angle. It just, that thought appeared in my head as you were talking, that like there's just that kind of feeling of being in control and having all of your data. Then another thought that occurred to me as you were saying that is that, like, in terms of having a net positive impact, when you think about it, it actually might prevent you from using things like SSO, like single sign-on. So like passwords are just like maybe one of the worst things in existence. Like, I actually heard somebody say that at a tech conference once during a security talk, which I loved, because the point the guy was trying to make was that it's just like, yes, obviously passwords keeps things secure, but you run into this risk of people using the same password, or like you said, trying to create clever little algorithms in their head. And, so it's just this terrible thing is that, like, yes, in theory, they should be really secure, but when it hits actual users, it ends up being less secure because of how people do it. So there's obviously been people trying to come up with all kinds of passwordless approaches. And one of like the most common ones over the past 15 years has just been single sign-on. Like, you use your Google account or your Microsoft account or your GitHub account, which is, I guess, the same thing now. You use your Facebook, Twitter account, whatever, and you just single sign on. You sign on to one platform, and then that platform authenticates you to other platforms. And there's, of course, this, if you want to talk, like, to bring it back to what you started at the beginning, you don't want like the hammer to be able to cut you off from every other tool on the farm. You don't want like getting cut out of your Google account to suddenly cut you off from every other service in your life. And so it's like, if you actually have a password manager and you have that you actually kind of own the password to everything, that kind of increases your control rather than only being able to authenticate through your email.
Yeah, absolutely. Great point. And to expand a little more on that last part you said, when we use, whether it's Google, Microsoft, Apple, whatever, for our single sign-on, they become the gatekeeper to our digital lives. And so we never want to rely entirely on one single third party, because if anything goes wrong, our access to them is revoked or blocked, or we just lose it for whatever reason. That is disastrous for our digital lives. If our entire lives, our entire accounts, if everything that we possibly need to function day to day is under the control of one little entry point into by one company, like if we're using Google's SSO for all of our, and we should probably say that's single sign-on. That's where you log into your Google account, and then that logs you into all of your other non-Google accounts as well. So that single point of failure is really dangerous. We don't want to. That's the opposite of sovereign computing. That would be serfdom computing.
Yeah.
So we don't want that. So what we want to do is, over the long term, maybe you listening right now, maybe you have all of your passwords stored in your Google account and you authenticate to everything with Google, or maybe it's Apple. That's okay. You can slowly start moving away from that. You can still keep your Google or Apple account or whatever, but just when you start, the next time you sign up for something, put it in your password manager instead of using the single sign-on SSO option from that company, like Google, Apple, Microsoft.
Yeah. Oh man, surf computing. I love that one. It almost makes me wonder if we need like some kind of we need like a I don't know, some kind of inverse of that for sovereign computing, like another 4-letter word or something. It's like surf computing, and then like, I don't know,
SOV computing, Chad computing. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe you can boost in and tell us what you think it should be. Yeah. Please do.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Well, that sounds like anything else you think we should cover today, or does that sound like a good wrap up point for today?
Yeah. Maybe we'll just do an outro. Again, I'm Jordan Bravo. I'm a software engineer, and we are recording here at ATL BitLab in the heart of Atlanta.
I'm Stephen DeLorme. I'm a UX guy working on Bitcoin. Yeah. Let us know what you want to hear about on future episodes of Cyber and Computing, and we'll see you on the internet. Ending music effects. Very cool. Oh, I never hit record.
Uh-oh.
Hey, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want to learn more about anything that we discussed, you can look for links in the show notes. That should be in your podcast player, or you can go to atlbitlab.com/podcast. On a final note, if you found this information useful and you want to help support us, you can always send us a tip in Bitcoin. Your support really helps it so that we can keep bringing you content like this. All right, catch you later.